Hey, welcome to Playing for Keeps, the show where we take a deep dive into emotional intelligence, sex, love, adult attachment theory, mental health, therapy, and everything in between that creates great relationships. Your host, DJ, is a certified life coach and emotional intelligence practitioner. She's here to be of service to all the listeners interested in love and relationship. Now, here's your host, DJ.
Hello, everybody. This is your girl DJ with Playing for Keeps podcast, and today I have a special guest. I am so excited. Her name is Yael Rosenstock Gonzalez. She is a sex educator, sex coach, researcher, author, speaker, curriculum developer, and workshop facilitator. As a queer, polyamorous, white-presenting Nurikanju, Yael has always been interested in understanding the multi-layer experiences of individuals. This led her to found Kaleidoscope Vibrations, LLC, a company dedicated to supporting and creating spaces for individuals to explore and find community in their identities. Through her company, she facilitates workshops, develops curriculum, offers identity exploration coaching, and publishes narratives often left out of mainstream publishing. Yael has been engaged in workshop development and facilitation since 2005 with children, youth, and adults. Before establishing her own company, she spent 6 years with a Center for Ethnic, Racial, and Religious Understanding, where she developed and led programs with an intersectional lens. In 2018, Yael published an intro guide to a sex-positive you, lessons, tales, and tips, a queer and trans inclusive book, and has since established herself as YaeltheSex Geek and begun offering sex coaching services. Yael is here to speak on intimacy, and within intimacy, she wants to speak about self, emotional, sexual, and physical, polyamory, consent, communication, relationship to body, sexual orientation, sexuality, kink, giver/taker, and knowing yourself. Hey, Yael, how are you today?
Good. So many things that we can talk about.
I know, right? Where are you today in the world?
I am in Bloomington, Indiana, where I moved in August.
Okay, tell me how the weather is and what's going on with the virus over there.
Oh, well, the weather is beautiful. We've got blue skies with these very fluffy, puffy clouds. And with the virus, it's not so bad. There's like lots of, it's the Midwest, so there's lots of room to walk around, and like I can stay the hell away from folks who don't wear masks.
Right.
It's pretty good. How about you?
I am here in Georgia, like 30 minutes away from Atlanta in Covington. So I'm in the country, y'all. The weather is cloudy today. Cases are going up here. Like I know several people who caught it, but we're not like bad, like I guess like Florida, California. So I guess we doing something right. So
I got tested today just in case, I was like, might as well.
Really, I'm too scared. I ain't got no symptoms, so I'm not gonna worry about getting tested. We just gonna continue to try to do the right thing. That's all I'm gonna try to do. Okay. So tell us a little bit just about yourself, like how you got into what you're doing, your upbringing. Tell us everything.
Sure. Well, y'all got my bio, right? So I don't know, I've been like pretty sexual and interested in sexuality since I was very little. Like I legit probably first had kinky tendencies around 5 years old that I can remember, like literally watching TV shows and getting turned on.
Wow.
Related to like BDSM topics. And so sex has been part of my life. My mother was super interested in making sure that she did not keep information from us. So if we had questions, she answered them honestly and thoroughly as she found to be age appropriate. And so I grew up in a fairly sex positive home, but I did experience some sexual trauma around 14, and that kind of led me to want to understand how people who were experiencing victimization were being treated, and what was like the mental health effects of experiencing a trauma over and over again as opposed to like once. And so I worked with victims of sex trafficking, domestic trafficking, and I worked with children who had been sexually abused and that kind of stuff. And then I was like, fuck, like this is a lot. It's emotional, it's hard, it's important. And I want to do something that doesn't drain me that way. And so I ended up going towards, how do I help people have really positive, beautiful, sexy, fulfilling, sexual and intimate lives? And that is my way of intervening in sexual violence, right? If we can promote positive sex, if we equate the word sex with mutual joy, mutual experience and pleasure, then we are already eradicating some forms of harm. And so that's how I ended up here.
So how do you work with people who have dealt with sexual trauma and turn it into like positive, like a positive? Because, you know, most of the times when people have gone through traumatic experiences, especially sexually, it gives a lot of adverse effects where they either shy away from it. I mean, I know some people that I know, it's turned them completely out. Like, how do you work with individuals like that?
And other people become actually hypersexual, right? They take control over their sexuality by having as much sex as they deem is good for them, right?
Yeah, that's what I meant by turning out. Yeah.
Oh, turning out. Sorry.
Sorry, I just used I didn't use the proper terminology. Sorry about that. And sorry if I offended anybody. That's just the only way I knew how to quickly.
No. I think that's fine. I'm really bad at slang. It's all good. Like my kids used to be like quizzing me and stuff, but I don't have teenagers anymore. So, but yeah, so I wouldn't say I specialize in trauma, but I work with a lot of queer people and a lot of women. And I find that like 75% of the women I know have experienced sexual trauma, right? And so it's not that it's something I specialize in. It's just like, if you're working in sex, like you are working with people who've experienced sexual trauma. In fact, Jim Aneka on Instagram and on Twitter is a trauma specialist that I would recommend. But I just ask them about their experiences. I ask them what they're seeking. So it's not, I don't need to know your story. I don't need to know what you went through. I need to know what you're seeking. I need to know what you feel, how you feel safety, like what kind of triggers do you have? And then we can talk about how to make sure that the things that trigger you don't occur. And if they do occur, how to navigate that with your partner so that they can help support you in that.
Got you. Okay. So let's get into the first topic that I read, where we talked about, where you said you want to talk about intimacy, because intimacy, a lot of people think that's just sex, but like you put out there, intimacy involves knowing yourself, emotional, it's sexual and physical. Do you want to break that down a little bit and talk about intimacy, and then even how you incorporate intimacy within helping people?
Yeah. So I very much am like an in to out kind of person. A couple months ago, I ran with my friend through Kaleidoscope Perspectives and my YaeltheSex Geek, an intimacy with self challenge. And so we asked people to do a number of things. And one of those things, for example, was to write a letter to yourself, pretending that someone else is writing it and bragging about you, being like, wow, this person's amazing. And these are the ways in which they are amazing. Let me tell you about them. But it was you writing about you. And so that was one way to develop intimacy with self and to remind yourself of all the ways that you're beautiful. And then we also had them like do a mirror exercise. And so you stand or you sit or you whatever in front of a mirror and you look and you watch how your body increases and decreases with your breath. And you watch the way that like maybe your nipples turn or, you know, and you just concentrate on that view. And I think our extra challenge that day was to take a photo of yourself. Right? In whatever way you want, it's silly or joyful or sexy, but just celebratory in some way. And so the mix of, sorry.
Those are powerful exercises. I didn't mean to interrupt you. I'm sorry.
Oh, no. Yeah, I'm actually developing a course where I'm going to have people deeper dive into these things. But yeah, so like just that idea that the intimacy, even with yourself, is more than with your body. Like we did have a masturbatory exercise. We had all those things. But the first three, I don't think had anything to do with the body, right? They were really about the mind and the spirit. And then I wrote an article and have freebies through my newsletters on intimacy with partners and intimacy with emotion. And so realistically, the emotion stuff, I make clear, this is with anyone. You could have intimacy with every person that you care about in your life. It does not have to be a sexual partner. And so you might choose to cook something together. And like, if it's something hard that you're challenging yourselves together, or taking you long walks or Google questions about how to fall in love, and maybe it's your best friend and you Google questions about how to fall in love because you can fall in love with your best friend platonically, right? And that's a big thing that me and my best friend are actually working on, is like a company centralized around that and those relationships. And then intimacy with partners is, sex, right? That sex, but also what comes around the sex. And so I really love the time, like if you have a partner who ejaculates on you, so like the cleanup. I think it's so intimate when someone cleans you up and having them scrub your back, like that's so intimate to me.
It is, especially when you really think on it, because people don't really think on it like that. They just kind of take it for granted in a way. So
but to me, it's care, right? Yeah. It's care, it's love. And I think that that's really beautiful. And then I have other exercises like don't touch each other, but like stare at each other for this amount of time, or touch, but you can't touch the genital areas. So like you're touching the arms and the legs and the toes and the nose, and right. And so there's all these different ways that I try and encourage people to explore their bodies and their sexuality and their intimacy outside of what's expected, and to really to enjoy the little things that we often forget in the rush.
Right. Okay. Awesome. So let's dive a little bit into relationship. We talked about relationship with the body within all of that. Actually, you dive into that. Communication. What issues with communication would you say you run into, like as a coach?
Yeah, I would say that for a lot of people, so realistically, consent is something that's communicated verbally and non-verbally. And to say that it's only communicated verbally would be a lie and an unreasonable expectation. But there's so many times where we misinterpret each other's words. And so there's definitely times where we misinterpret each other's bodies and that kind of language. And so one of the exercises in my book is to actually have people sit down and write down, how do you communicate, whether it's sex or not, that you want something to happen? Right? And what does it look like when you're verbally communicating that? And what does it look like when you're non-verbally communicating that? And then what does it look like when you don't want something to happen? And like write down how you do that. And then the next part of that is, how clear are these things to others? And you're supposed to go and ask people, like, if I do this, does this make sense to you? Would you understand? And the intention is to really think about, am I communicating what I want to be communicating? Or, and you are, right? But are other people going to understand it, so that you don't want to have a situation where someone actually cares about you, but they misinterpreted you. And I think that in most cases, you can tell when someone doesn't want to be having sex. I'm very good at like stepping back and being like, you don't see that into this. Let's have a chat, right?
Right.
But also, I want to avoid the situations when people are dense or don't care enough about me to pause, so that I don't end up feeling hurt or used or sad. Okay. And so I try and help people come up with that language. They can talk to their partners and be like, hey, if this happens, this is my freeze response, or this is my trauma response, or this is my blank response. This is a signal to you to take care of me.
Got you. Okay. And that's powerful as well, because a lot of people don't know how to clearly give out consent when they don't want to just say no. Mm-hmm. Got you.
And so thinking about what that looks like for you, and then also how to recognize that in someone else and maybe play role it, right? Like, what happens when I do this? Is it clear? Like, should I do something else? And teaching each other's languages.
That's very important. That's very important. Okay, awesome. So sexual orientation. Just tell us a little bit about that. Of course, it is common knowledge, but tell us a little bit about that. How do you work with people with sexual orientation? And then what does it mean to you?
I spent all of my adolescence, like, not identifying as full-on straight. I'd be like, I'm 80% straight, right? Like, every time I filled out one of those forms, I was like, oh my God, I'm not a lesbian, and I don't think straight's right. But I didn't really know what to do. And I was also like under the impression that everyone in the world thought that women's bodies were more attractive. I was just like, there's all these paintings and all these things that show off breasts and hips. And so I was like, yeah, the world sees women as attractive. That's not me being queer. That's just me being human. And then I found out that's not just me being human. I'm attracted to women. I'm attracted to people of all genders, it turns out. I'm pansexual, but I'm just, yeah, for me, it was such a process to validate me, because I'd be like, well, I've dated guys and I've only ever dated one gender. I've never dated the other gender, so I must not be anything but straight. But the fact that I had this conversation every year, I was constantly thinking about it. If you're thinking about it that much, you're not straight, right? But we're raised with this, like, you have to know. And it's like, you don't have to know. You don't need to label it. You don't have to have experiences to be part of an identity. It's just about attraction, right?
Right.
Like, you could, in fact, I could have had sex with 12 women and be straight, because if it wasn't for me, it wasn't for me. Doesn't mean that I can't mechanically have sex, right?
Right. That is true.
And so there's this obsession. Like, last week I got a question. I had sex with a trans woman. Am I gay? And I was like, well, first off, you had sex with a woman and you're a man. You can't be gay. Like, she's a woman, right? Whatever body part she might have, she's a woman. So if you identify as a straight man, you still get to be a straight man. And also, what does it matter? Like, why do you need to be a straight man?
I think it's because of, just like you said, kind of just how we were raised, and just the stigma around just all of that too. And then it gets even deeper when you get into the different, like, backgrounds and races and all that stuff. So I don't know if
It's also a complexity. But I tell people to try and think about how to push past it, right? Like, we were raised this way. Does it mean it's the right way? Do we need to stick with it? Especially if it's tormenting us, right?
Right.
You should be able to have sex with whomever you're attracted to, as long as they're excited to have sex with you too. And it shouldn't be about the labels, even if our society tells us, right? And I experienced that too. Being queer is not that popular in some of my groups. But I'm as a Latina, right? Like, some of my family doesn't really vibe well with queer identities.
Yeah.
But yeah, and like, why? And the reason is because we're taught it. Doesn't mean that it's right. We were taught lots of things.
So for you, like, how did you open your mind up to this conclusion? Because a lot of people tend to stay boxed in, or they'll hide. They'll stay in the closet and they'll hide. Because I know for me, like, I'm not against anything as long as you're honest. You know what I'm saying? And you're open and you're honest. You can be anything you want to be, because I don't believe in living in torment either. Like, regardless of whether I agree with it, like, personally or not, but if you're open and you're honest about yourself, then that's all I can do is respect you at the end of the day. How did you open up that box for yourself?
All of my identities not all of them, but most of my identities growing up, I didn't feel like enough, right? So the way I look made me felt like I wasn't Latina. My mother's Catholic, which made me feel that I wasn't Jewish. Like, and so the fact that none of my identities felt like I qualified for them, that was consistent. And that was also true as queer. And so eventually it was just exposure, and the fact that people are happy. Not everyone. There are plenty of gatekeepers in every population and every community, but there are other people who are like, no, you are part of us, right? You count, and your experiences are valid. Which is why I think my work is almost all validation. I spend like all day validating people. Like, yes, you matter, you count. And it's that, right? It's that, like, needing to have had that and knowing that other people need it too. And so for me, it was exposure and validation from outside people.
Oh, okay. Got you. All right. Now, as far as sexuality, tell me a little bit about that and what you want to give in the kink, giver/taker, knowing yourself. Tell me a little bit about that and what you wanted to dive into with those topics, because there is so much within that.
So, yeah, I dedicated the first entire section of my book to sexual identities. And I think that people often think that means sexual orientation. It's like, yeah, sexual orientation is one of them, but there's so much more that we're attracted to than gender. And sexual orientation generally refers to gender attraction. And so I want people to think about, like, if you really love getting head, then you shouldn't be with someone who hates giving head.
Right.
That's just not a compatible match.
Not at all.
Or if you really love giving head, you shouldn't probably be with someone who really hates getting head, right? Like, that kind of stuff. Like, if you love penetration and your partner hates penetration, and like one of you needs to be penetrated to do the penetrating, like, all of these things are things that you should be talking about. You don't want two people who like to sit back and just like get touched, because then ain't no one gonna get touched.
Right.
Or, so that's like what that giver taker conversation's about. And then with kink and vanilla, there are plenty of kinky people who have vanilla partners, and particularly if you're polyamorous, have all these opportunities to in fact have kinky partners and vanilla partners with whom you're doing different things, both sexually and non-sexually, right? You can go bowling with one of them, or like, I don't know, make ceramics with someone else. But like, you need to know these things about yourself so you can address your needs, or recognize when your needs are not being met, and decide what are needs, desires versus things that you can happily and be fulfilled without, versus like just having a hole inside yourself.
Right.
And so to me, it's super important that we're able to identify those things, and then you make conscious decisions about what you are and are not letting into your life, as opposed to like it just happening to you and you'd be like, damn, not so great, or maybe damn great, in which case good for you. But but there's a lot of damn not so great.
So polyamory, I know very little compared to you. So what would you describe, what's polyamory to you? Like, I know for me, like when I was kind of introduced to it, what I kind of got out of it was, you know, when you're poly, maybe your main partner, of course, everyone can't fulfill everyone's needs, period. But, you know, you're someone who loves multiple people, and you want all of your needs fulfilled. So you openly and honestly communicate these needs to your partner. And if you guys agree to that lifestyle, then you actually have another partner, and that other partner does other things. Those other things that other partner may not fulfill. I know that might just be a piece of it. Could you go into just detail about polyamory and what it is to you? And from your bio, it looks like you are poly. Is that correct?
Yes,
So,
I am.
so tell me a little bit just about that lifestyle to you, because I know it's different to everybody, and there's different dynamics and different.
Yeah.
It's just a whole lot to it that people don't understand. In reality.
I think you hit the nail on the head though with that statement that like nobody can fulfill all the things for someone else, right? We have friends, we have family, some of us have children, like, because we need multiple relationships in our lives in order to have a fully fulfilled life. And polyamory recognizes that does not have to be limited to platonic relationships, that you can have multiple romantic, loving relationships. Now, there are asexual people who are polyamorous. They don't have sex with any of their partners, but they have loving relationships with their partners. And so polyamory does not require sex, but it does mean that you have these connections, and you recognize that love is not a limited element in the world, right? That there is unlimited amounts of love. And so on that note, there's different types. There's hierarchical, which is what you just described. Like you have your main person, and then you have like your side people, right? Your girlfriends, your hookups, your travel. Yeah. And I am hierarchical as well. I like having the idea that I could settle down with someone one day, and that we might start a family or what have you. That to me is a beautiful idea, while we recognize that we will also have other people in our lives. And for me personally, I don't have to have multiple people in my life at the same time, but the idea that I would lose out on a beautiful connection with someone because I'm in a relationship, to me is not a worthy loss. Right? I don't like the idea of being limited. If I find someone, I connect with someone, then I want to explore that love, whatever form it takes. And polyamory allows that. It allows you to explore whatever comes. There are other people who do triads and quads, which means like 3 or 4 people together. And so they're like basically monogamous, but with each other. There's anarchy, which is like all my relationships matter, and like they don't have specific values based upon whether we're having sex or you're related to me or what have you. And there's solo poly, which is like I am my most important relationship, and then I love and care about other people, but the relationship I most identify with is the one with my own.
Got you. That's the one I wasn't sure of, the last one you just mentioned. I've never heard of that one, so I learned something new today.
Great.
Yeah, I learned something new today. Okay. So like you said, you're into the hierarchy. And then one thing you brought up too, that people have a misconception of, they feel like poly, you just having sex with everybody. And that's not the case. I know, like I said, I experienced it to a certain degree, and they were all about building. So that's what they were all about, building. But this particular couple wanted a V. type of
A
treatment.
unicorn.
Yeah, and now that's not my thing. You know what I'm saying? I was like that. Yeah, that's why it's like,
It's
I
not my
think,
thing either.
right. So that's why I was like, the first one that you spoke of, and then even the last one sounded more like up my alley if I was even to entertain the poly lifestyle. So I'm glad you broke that down to all of them, because I definitely learned something new. Okay, so let me ask you this. As far as poly, let me go back to that for a second before I ask this other question I had. How did you approach, well, how did you know that, you wanted to approach that lifestyle? And then how did you approach it? Were you in a monogamous relationship and you just kind of opened it up? Or were you just kind of by yourself and you made this decision and you just kind of got with,
Yeah. So I'm poly in the same way that I'm queer. Like,
okay.
it is what it is. It's not like whether or not I practice it is a choice, but it is in fact how I feel most natural. And so I had monogamous relationships, and I always thought, wow, this makes no sense that I can't have sex or go out on dates with that other person. Like, that to me how does that affect this relationship? Me having that relationship shouldn't affect this. But I am fiercely loyal, and like you said, like really into communication and honesty. Those to me are the most important things and values. And so I have never cheated. But I always felt like, wow, there must be something wrong with me, because in my head, these don't have to be conflicting. Mm-hmm. And then when I was in my 20s, I met someone while taking a tour of New Orleans with this guy. He like introduced me to this throuple, this group of 3. And that's when I heard the word polyamory. And I was like, oh my God, this is a thing. There are people like me. I'm not like fucked up in the mind or something. And after that, I was with a partner who was not going to be into polyamory. And so we didn't really broach it, because again, I really don't like to hurt people. And I feel like lots of guilt that I shouldn't be feeling.
Yeah.
But then after that relationship ended, I was like, that's it. I'm coming out. And I came out as poly. I was like, this is who I am. I like introduced my name is Yael. I'm polyamorous. Especially if someone flirted with me, I was like, just so you know, I'm polyamorous. Right. And I just wanted to throw that out there, because there's lots of people who don't want to be with someone who is, and that's totally fine. But I don't want anyone to feel like I lied to them or misconstrued, or just like from the get, if you're trying to put a chain on me of some sort, it's going to be uncomfortable. It's not going to feel right for me.
Got you. So I know with poly, do you run into, so people tend to be naturally jealous. Like, how do you work through that? Do you have any issues with that? Because I know another thing of why people are open to poly, it's kind of an ego thing, or or the fact that we're all raised in, love is sacrifice. So I think that's another reason why people kind of turn their nose up to it. Like, how did you wrap your mind kind of away from all of those concepts?
I think that's why what I mean by me being poly is kind of like me being queer or me being Latin. Like, it's not a choice. And so I think that there are many people who could be open to polyamory that currently who aren't necessarily naturally quote unquote polyamorous, right? But for whom that lifestyle would work. I literally, like, the way that my brain works, I do not feel jealousy if I know someone is having sex with someone else. Like, unless it's on my time. I have this really big thing, because quality time is one of my love languages. Okay. So if we've agreed to see each other, or if it's our date night, and then you leave me for whomever else, whether you're having sex with them or not, I'm going to feel like all types of ways. I'm going to be hella jealous, very upset, super hurt. But if it's not my time, if it's like, oh, I'm going to meet up with this person on Tuesday, like, cool. I didn't, like, you were not mine. Right? Like, we share time together, we share love together, we share whatever it is together, but like, you and your own time is yours. Right.
Got you. Okay. Because that's what I've heard too. Like, some people, they're like you said, they naturally just kind of, that's who they are. That's how they feel. And that's how they've always approached relationships. But I know there's a lot of people too who kind of, they're introduced to it, and the concept seems cool, and then they try it, but then, like I was just saying, ego gets in the way, or jealousy gets in the way. And then every day it's a struggle, because they have to constantly work on those things. So,
but monogamy is a struggle, right? And people don't recognize that. Like, y'all, we got a 50% divorce rate, and I think even a higher cheating rate. Like if that's what that's not success, right? Monogamy is not successful in all of those examples. And so polyamory is something you have to work on. It's not easy.
Yeah.
But neither is monogamy. So the choice is like, what makes sense for you, your values, and the way that you love, and which one do you want to work on? Do you want to work on being faithful and getting as much as you can out of one person? Or do you want to work on like abundantly living those types of relationships and having to work on your insecurities and jealousy consistently? Because that's true for people in polyamory. Polyamorous people get jealous all the time.
Yeah.
But we're choosing to talk about it and communicate about it,
which is
in a way that is transparent.
Because I know I was doing another podcast with someone else, and we were comparing like monogamy to polyamory, and we were talking about how, you know, monogamy is cool. Like love, it's kind of special when someone can really sacrifice for one person and they honestly do it, and they don't cheat and all that stuff. That, I think that's a beautiful thing. Don't get me wrong. But I also was saying how, you know, polyamory, when you're honest and you're open and it's done ethically, it's better than a monogamous relationship where the two people are cheating anyway and they're lying and things of that nature. So there's a lot of misconception when it comes to poly. I know there's one dynamic that always confuses me. It's the one where one person is poly and then the other is monogamous. Sometimes it makes me wonder, is that person just being in that relationship just to be, I guess, just to kind of be with that person? I guess a monogamous person could be with a poly person if they truly love that person, and just, I don't know, that dynamic kind of confuses me a little bit. Yeah, I don't know if I guess because I put myself in their shoes, like I couldn't do it.
I had a relationship burn hella hard because of that kind of thing, where, I mean, they were also engaging in other relationships, but they didn't identify as polyamorous, and like the ethics went sour. Not on my side though.
Yeah, because they weren't being true to themselves.
Exactly.
So, so that's why I said that dynamic always is a question mark to me. But I know there's people out there that probably could just be with that one person no matter what, because they love that person. But I always wonder, like, deep down, like, how do they really feel? But
like I said, I've never cheated. I had a 4-year relationship. I got out of a recent. I don't cheat. Yeah. But to me, it's not a matter of like, I can do the sacrifice. I know that if today I was with the same person, I could do it. It's not an impossible feat. I just don't see why you would live life limiting love.
Got you.
And so for me, it's like, it's a what you lose, not a matter of like, can I do it? Of course, that's not an issue. It's not even hard. A monogamy to me is not hard. But why not embrace love in its fullest forms?
Got you. Okay. Now, I've heard the term queer. Like, yeah. I've heard it. Can you break down what queer is? And this is going to be an educational moment for me. Break it down totally for me.
I would love to break it down. I normally do. So queer is basically not straight.
Okay.
Right? So everything can fall under queer. Now, people who identify as men-loving men often will just say gay. And women-loving women will often just say lesbian.
Right.
But they can also say queer, and then all of us who fall in the like, we love people, or we love people of multiple genders or of some genders, we all get to, not everyone accepts the term because it is a derogatory term from a couple decades ago, but all of them really have been used derogatorily against our community.
Okay.
And a lot of us are reclaiming the term. And it also ends up working for gender, because if you're queer gendered, it's basically another way to say you're not cis. You're not someone who identifies with this gender that they were assigned at birth.
Got you. Okay, because I'm like, why don't queer people just use bisexual? But I guess it's deeper than just being bisexual.
Yeah, so bisexual means that you are attracted to 2 or more genders. But people often think it means you're attracted to 2 genders because the word bi means 2.
Okay.
And there's many genders. And so people, I think like myself, don't want to be misconstrued as only being attracted to cisgendered men and cisgendered women.
Gotcha.
Right. I want it to be clear that I am attracted to genders beyond I'm attracted to trans folks. I'm attracted to gender non-binary folks. And pansexual specifically isn't about gender. It's about attraction to people and your attraction is not gender-based. So to be clear, like I see gender, it is not something that matters so much in my attraction.
Got you. Thank you for that breakdown, because I always just had this big old question mark, and I never wanted to disrespect anybody and just like, what does it really mean? Like, okay, let me ask you this. What was the hardest lesson you had to learn in regards to love and relationships?
I'm not sure what the hardest lesson I had to learn was, but I'd say that the lesson that I learned and I'm consistently learning and working on is that like I matter and boundary making. And so being confident in asserting my needs, wants, safety, and learning to not feel guilty, right? Like,
yeah,
I don't know if it's because I'm Jewish, raised by a Catholic mother, but whatever it is, I got guilt to go for days. And so I'm very nurturing. And so I'm like, oh, I must take care of this person. Like I'm having a trauma response. How are they feeling? Right? Like that's where my mind goes. You feel that too?
I'm having a Me Too moment. Yes, I think that is still my hardest lesson that I'm learning, because I am the people pleaser. Do you hear me? Like I am the people pleaser, and I could be feeling really shitty about something, and it wouldn't matter as long as the other person was okay, and I would totally neglect myself. So yes, I feel you 1,000-fold. I feel you.
And that's one of the things I really seek to help other people take control of in their lives. But it is something that I'm constantly having to practice. And that's part of it, right? It's a practice. Like, did I learn my lesson? Yes. And have I learned it multiple times since? Yes. And I'm constantly growing and constantly grateful for the partners who help remind me how important it is to maintain this part of my life. But it is hard, right? The people pleasing is ingrained.
Yeah, it is. It's super hard. And it's something, like I said, setting boundaries definitely, and all of that stuff is something I'm still learning. I've like you said, I've learned a lesson, but then sometimes for me, I'll have to relearn it because I'll slip back. You know what I'm saying? So it's just, like you said, it's a practice. So that's something I'm trying not to beat myself up on as well.
We gotta have grace.
Yes, that's something I'm learning too. I gotta have grace for myself, because that's something, because I'll tend to beat myself up when I slide back a little bit. But I'm learning, I'm on this journey. So overall, I'm proud of myself. So let me ask you this. So if you were to travel outside of the country to 3 places, 2 with a partner and then 1 by yourself, what places would they be?
Wow, that was random. I love traveling. I am about to be 30 years old, and I've probably been to around 30 countries and who knows how many cities.
Oh, wow.
I have not been to, but really love how it looks in pictures, and it's super touristy. Bali. I think I'd be interested if someone's going to pay my tickets. That's a nice faraway place to send my butt to. Let's see, Bali. My heart lives in southern Spain. I've lived there, and I feel really good when I visit, and so returning there always feels like home.
Awesome.
And I guess I could do those 2 with a partner, and then I'd want to take my mom to the Galapagos. She's been dying to go forever, and while we were able to go to Ecuador a couple of years ago, we haven't been able to go to the Galapagos yet.
Oh, that's awesome. I ask people that question because I want to travel. So I just, I get like countries and cities and stuff from my guests. So I like to ask that question.
I can give you recommendations after the show, the places I've actually been.
Okay, that would be awesome, because I know that's something I want to knock off my bucket list. I want to travel. I've been nowhere. I think I've been to like maybe 4 states in my whole life, and it was all due to having to travel for work. So
well, you got time. You'll make it happen.
I got to. Next question. If you were to go out on a date, name 3 places you would go and then why.
Okay. My fancy schmancy bougie date option would be horseback riding.
Ooh.
Assuming that they could too. I love horses. As a kid, I always wanted a horse, and we lived in a city, so that wasn't going to happen, and it was too expensive to ride. So in college, I learned, and yeah, there's nothing. I always say salsa, horseback riding and sex are my favorite activities in the world. And there's just like a thrill of being connected with a horse. So I would, yeah, that's not even the person could come along too. Me having a date with a horse. Oh well. I really like, as long as it's not super buggy, I really like being in parks and outdoors, like doing a picnic that you like plan out. You got lots of really yummy foods, lots of fruits and cheeses, like that kind of stuff is really nice. And then I like activity dates, like archery, or I don't know, my sister did a gun range once. I don't know if I'm into the gun thing, but like that kind of stuff, like maybe making pottery, something that you get to use your creative skills or your physical skills and you bond together.
Okay. Now my last question, as far as questions in regards to this, do you have a special memory, like a first memory that you wouldn't mind sharing with the audience, like maybe a first love letter, or maybe just a first interaction that was special to you?
First interaction.
And it don't even really have to be a first. Maybe it was when you came to full realization of who you were and you interacted with that particular person.
I have someone that I can give a shout out to. So when I lived in Argentina, I ended up traveling at the end and met this person, and we met in one town and we ended up meeting up in another, and there was no rooms available. So we ended up having to get a hotel room, and I was like, well, we're in a bed. Like, we should just have sex. Like, there's a bed. So like, you know, because normally in a hostel, but like we had a bed in a private room. I was like, well, we can't like not have sex. So it was terrible sex. We had terrible sex.
No.
We both sucked. It wasn't just them. It wasn't just me. We both were just not good. We were very tired. 24-hour bus ride. So anyway, but the next day we hung out, and like for the week after we hung out, and it was beautiful and it was lovely. And then we kept in touch, and then they visited me in New York, and then I visited them and helped them like pack up in England where they live. And throughout those like years, this person helped me develop confidence in my kinky identity, because I felt like I was anti-feminist in being submissive.
Got you.
And they really helped me, like, they're not kinky, but they helped me feel confident and validated in that identity. And it was just this amazing, like, non-sexual, sexual-y relationship that we had that was just kind of caring.
It's such a beautiful thing when you run into people like that who just help you in your development in that way, because it helps with confidence. And when you have confidence, it helps with everything else in life. So that is a beautiful thing. And I know for me, I've had experiences like that with people, versus when I've had people before and they didn't do me right. Okay. So let me ask you this. What projects do you have now? What you got going on?
I got all the things going on all the time. So I'd say the thing that I really want to be working on right now is developing my online course. I think that'll be a great way to reach more folks with this kind of material. Books aren't for everyone. I have a lot of stuff on my Insta, but people I think sometimes want a deeper dive. So that's something I'm working on right now, like becoming a sex positive you is probably what's going to be called. I also am part of something called the Diverse Bodies Project, which is a nude photo interview series. We interviewed and took photos of folks naked of all different body types and ages and ethnic groups and what have you, body sizes. And we are currently like putting together the pages to eventually print this damn book that's taken us years to make. So if you've been in the project, so sorry, we haven't abandoned you. We're not creeps. We're not just keeping your photos. It's in the works. But yeah, I think that's like mostly where I'm at right now, just because things in person are stalled. So I'm not hosting retreats. I'm not developing workshops of Kaleidoscope perspectives right now because of that. So, and then I'm trying to relaunch my book because I abandoned it to work, because I'm publishing other people's books, and that's wonderful and beautiful. And I love supporting people's work. And now I'm realizing I need to give my own book some love.
Got you. Okay. Now let me ask you this. Where can the audience find you?
I can be found all over the interwebs. I am YaeltheSex Geek on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. I am Diverse Bodies Project, or part of it, on Instagram and Facebook. If you got children, I'm Ask Yaya 3. Who knew there were so many Ask Yayas? On Instagram, and Kaleidoscope _perspectives on Instagram and probably Facebook, which is a like connection with self, connection with others, and connection with your finances and your career-based company to really help people connect all the aspects of their life in a way that will bring them the things they are seeking.
Awesome. Well, all of that will also be in the show notes. Yael, I want to thank you for coming on. It was a pleasure, girl.
Thank you, DJ Robinson. I had so much fun.
Yay. All right. And until next time, I want to thank all of the listeners for coming on as well.
Thank you for tuning in to today's show. If you like this podcast, please download and subscribe. If there's anything you would like to talk about in regards to relationships, or would like to be a guest on the show to speak on relationships or get advice, you can always connect via social media at Playing for Keeps or email DJ at info@p4kdating.com. Thank you for tuning in, and bye for now.